Ladies and gentlemen, hello, welcome. It's Skill up here. I am delighted to be sitting down with two of the head honchos for the Division 2. I've got Creative Director Julian Garrity, and I've got, what's your actual title?
Game Director.
Game Director, Matthias Carlson. Julian I've had the chance to sit down with before in the past, and Matthias we've only met for the first time at the show, so thank you for the chance, I really appreciate it. I guess the first thing I really wanted to kick off with was, thinking retrospectively and how it's influenced the future. What is the sort of number one learning point, or top 2 or 3 learning points you took from the Division 1 that you were really keen to address with the sequel?
It's a tricky one because there's a lot of things that we learned. We went through a huge amount of growing pains. There was a lot of great stuff at launch, but we continued investing in it and spending time on it and listening to the community and improving it. If I think of the 1 or 2 things, I think the biggest thing for me was that a paid DLC model split the community in a way that I don't think is good for us in the short term, medium term, or long term. So I think that's a huge learning that I don't think we're ever going to go back to.
Right. So that's interesting because we know that there's also a premium pass which is available. So from that, can I infer that there's not going to be anything that will split the community within that premium pass at all?
I'm not 100% on what that premium pass is, but philosophically,
sure.
No, there should never be anything that splits the community there.
Right, yeah. So tell me, why did this need to be a sequel? The games as a service model is evolving right now. A lot of people just sort of keep their games going forever. Why did this need to be a new game versus, let's just keep going and add another chunk to, the existing framework?
Well, there again, I think we wanted to go back and correct a few things, systems-wise, like behind the hood, beneath the hood wise in the game, so that we could make it really evolve in a better way. So it wasn't a decision taken lightly. It was something that we thought about a lot, but if you play the game today and if you see the sort of reactivity of the combat, the snappiness of the combat, I don't think we could have done that with the same game. I think there was a moment where we had to make a hard decision of, okay, we need to do a new game. We're going to lean into it. We're going to add new stories, new location, new things to discover, and a lot of beneath the hood tweaks.
I think in doing so, speaking of leaning in, we didn't really lean into that, the great adventure starting from a Warning Tour agent coming into DC and getting the power journey, once again. Growing not just in power, but of course also in width and flexibility, in how you build your character and how you play. Right?
Yeah. So I guess a follow-on to that would be, what would you say are the major flagship features, changes, systems, what have you, that really make this game a sequel versus, say, a DLC?
Right. We tweaked and tuned and refined so many things. First of all, like we really looked at combat, the RPG systems, all of that. But I think one thing that's really exciting for us is how we approach the open world, the open living world this time around, and how we look at how do we create not just activities, but things that are dynamic and surprising and that create a backdrop of movement, but ultimately things for you to do as a player that you can't 100% predict. That also generates a lot of replay value and ultimately surprise, right? So the enemy factions and the civilians this time around, they're out and about doing things with intention, targeting resources, fulfilling goals, etc. So I think that is absolutely one of them.
And that's kind of a weird one because the amount of games, UB games, other games that say living worlds and the emergent gameplay from a living world. Pretty much every game does that, but for us it's a huge investment, and I genuinely believe it'll make an incredible impact in the way that the game's played. Generating activities, generating stories, emergent stories for players within that world.
So are you sort of talking about the idea that civilians will be sort of approaching a certain spot on a map that's being held by a certain faction and they'll begin fighting and you could come along and do that? Is that what you're sort of talking about? Is that a tangible example?
That's an absolute tangible example. I mean, what we showed at E3 was a control point based in a crashed Air Force One.
Yeah.
That's just one of the control points around the map, and securing that will help the civilians and the settlements with resources. But you can lose that control point, and it becomes a sort of meta game around the open world, and not the main missions, not the side missions, not the encounters, or all of those things. So it adds this layer which is going to make a big difference to how the game is played.
For sure. I think one of the other big changes that's coming to the game are obviously classes. That didn't exist before, now it's a thing. Tell me, what was some of the inspiration for that? How is that going to feel to play that? And the 3 that we saw, are they the only 3 that we're going to get at launch, or could we expect others?
So first of all, we don't really think of them as classes in that way,
Okay.
right? It's really important for us that everyone gets to make a some ways mutually exclusive choice at the start of the game going into the specializations, but they're really about adding on top of the toolbox you've been building up throughout the leveling game and the campaign, and then you're free to max them all out. Take that progression journey, starting with the signature weapon in each one of them, and then have full freedom and flexibility to switch between them.
So you can switch between those specializations so you don't need to create a new character per...
No.
Okay, great, because I think people had questions about that, so that's good news.
So what you see in the demo is what you can imagine as this completely fresh specialization, where fresh in the sense that the players have just hit level 30 and that they've picked the signature weapon.
Got it.
This is pre the then little progression track that follows, and what we've also talked about is that you get unique versions of mods, essentially, of certain skills, right?
Right. So within those specialization choices, there's even more depth and more progression that allows you to specialize further and choose your build within that specialization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. Will we keep our existing characters, or will we make new characters in DC?
Brand new characters.
Brand new characters. Okay.
Brand new characters. That was part of the hard decision as well. But again, the whole progression game, the whole campaign, it's a power journey. It's something to be experienced. So it's something that we think is a good thing as well. It's going to be a fun ride. Now, we are going to reward players who have invested a lot with the Shields program that goes live today.
Yep. What's today, is it?
I think so, 14th. I can't remember.
Okay, I don't even know what... They all blur together, the days at E3.
They do.
Is it 13th or 14th?
Yeah, I think it's today.
All right.
Okay, right.
It's today. So it's launching today. So in the Division 1, the first game, lots of shields, 12 shields, four today, a few more later on. And those are basically rewarding you for certain activities in game, certain feats in game. Maybe some casual, maybe some, just completionist, and then some super hardcore.
Yeah.
And those will reward you in the first game and in the second game.
Okay,
so it's just a token of appreciation. It's a start. It's a sign that you're a veteran within that game.
Nice. So just coming very briefly back to the RPG question, would you say that the game is striving to be, more casual or streamlined, or would you say the game is striving to be deeper, more complex, like a beefier RPG? Where do you think it lands on that spectrum?
I would not say more casual in that sense. I think we're very committed and focused on having depth, breadth, and variability within the gear game, and all the things that are part of the RPG system: the weapons, the gear, the skills, its mods, and now also the specializations. Right, so we're adding things on top of there that can act as levers as well. We do, however, want to. We set out to make it more accessible.
Right.
So it's about how you approach it and building complexity in layers, and also tying, parts of how it works to things that are more intuitive to just the human brain and things that we can relate to in the real world, and which is partially what's behind our changes to armor and things like that.
Well, that's a good segue actually, because the brands are coming, as if that's the right term, where weapons and armor now have manufacturers' brands, and with them come specific characteristics. But I mean, I'm a little bit confused about how that system works. I know a lot of other people are. Do you want to explain how that system actually works? Are these replacements for gear sets like in the old days, or is it something else?
They're not replacements.
Okay.
They function similarly though. So all gear that drops on or is awarded in other ways throughout the game comes with a brand.
Right.
And they function as sets. So if you mix and match and let's say equip 2-3 pieces of this one, you will get inherent bonuses to that brand that are not part of the randomization. Meaning that they have profile and style built into them, which we then take, of course, further with the gear sets when they come into play.
Right. So there are gear sets,
yes,
separate from brands.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So those concepts exist in parallel.
But it's also a way that we think is super exciting. Playing the game now when we playtesting is that was part of the intention, which is to bring in more build playstyle choice in the gear game in the leveling journey as well. So because you can if you operate, you think about that on a brand level, you're more able to stick to those higher levers, right? In building a profile outside of the RNG.
So you're saying that even during the leveling process, I'm going to have to start thinking about this stuff already?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's interesting. Now, I think certainly one of the biggest questions I have is just around the number of features they're going to ship at launch. We've had some other games that have come out as sequels and they built up over time, and then a lot of those features were removed, and people felt very disappointed because they're like, well, I'd love that feature. Why is it gone now? Things like recalibration and match-made PvP and resistance and all that sort of stuff. Is all of that going to exist at launch? What is the approach you're planning on taking with those features?
It's a tough question to answer. We've completed our alpha. We passed our alpha a month and a half ago, maybe more, in Paris, and then we started working really on the E3 demo and E3 presence as well. Now we need to go back and start working on what are we going to ship with for March. So we've got a very, very ambitious game. The scale of it is very big, content-wise and world-wise, activity-wise too. It'll be a much larger game than the first game at launch for sure.
Larger in what sense?
Pretty much in every sense that we want to approach.
So more missions?
More activities, more missions, more things to do, more world, more things to explore, that type of thing. So scope-wise, pure content scope-wise, it's going to be more. Now, will we have absolutely every single feature from the Division plus 2 years of post-launch? No, there's no way that we're going to be able to hit that level of all of those features. Does it mean that we won't have those features eventually? No, because we'll probably work on things that are similar or tweaks of it. But what I can say is that this is the same team that did the Division 1. This is the same team that did the post-launch for Division 1. So all of those learnings, all of those lessons, we're going to apply them to what we're going to launch with.
Got it. So let's talk PvP. It's a huge part of the Division experience. Love it or hate it, because obviously it's a controversial experience, in the Dark Zone especially. What can you tell us about how the Dark Zone might evolve in the sequel?
Absolutely nothing.
Right, got it. Well, that's exciting. That shuts that down nice and fast.
I'm sorry.
Can you tell us, because I think one of the questions, certainly one question I have is just around balancing, right? Because it's not about the Dark Zone, this is about balancing in general. Are there any intentions to balance PvE and PvP differently this time around? Or is it going to be the case like in the old days where it's always the same?
We're looking at every tool in the toolbox to make sure that both experiences are the very best they can be. And but it shouldn't feel like two different games.
Okay.
Right, but we're putting a lot of focus and effort on that. Absolutely.
Okay. So
and to take the Dark Zone experience.
Sure.
to the next level.
Right. So it's possible that you're saying it's possible that PVE and PvP could be balanced separately. You've got nothing's off the table, is what you're saying. Nothing's off the table.
Nothing's off the table.
Okay, right, cool, fair enough.
Do you have a preference?
Certainly have a strong preference. They're managed differently, but that's just me. I know a lot of people actually love the fact that you build a gear set, you bring it into the dark zone, and that's the one you get to use to wreck people's faces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I see how it's a very difficult decision, but I also see how being able to manage them separately allows you guys to be very pinpointed with your changes, and those guys can enjoy that thing, and those guys enjoy that thing, and that's it.
It's not off the table, but we want to also find that sweet spot where we respect.
Definitely, yeah.
The way you've decided to play the game as the character you're playing, and that is as much as possible transversal to the seamlessness of the nature of the game as well.
Doesn't make our lives easy.
No, certainly not. And I think my absolute favorite part of the Division was survival. Any information on whether, can you confirm that as a feature is coming back, or is that still one of those, hey, we're seeing what's possible? Hand that back very carefully, not touching that one.
I love survival.
Yeah, it's the best.
So we're not talking about it, but I'd be incredibly surprised if it doesn't come back to
there we go.
the Division and Washington DC.
Very exciting. Okay, that's great. I'm actually super happy to hear that. Like, that's fantastic.
I think it's one of those things that, because we split the community, it wasn't quite. It didn't quite get the shine that it should have, and I think it's a shame because there's so many great emotions and player stories that come out of that mode that to give it a little bit more shine and visibility, put it on a pedestal a little bit, I think is something that we should be doing.
For sure.
So I can't talk about it.
Right. He can't talk about it. Got it. The other major feature, and I think that really sets this game apart from the predecessor, is the inclusion of raids. Now, obviously, you're not going to start telling me what's in the raids, just to be double checked. Can you tell me what's in the raids? Okay,
No.
I asked the question. But I would like to know about the definition of raids, because lots of developers like to be quite funky with the way that they use this word. Are we imagining raids in the traditional World of Warcraft, Destiny sense, where you got a big area with lots of bosses, structured encounters, collect the loot, off we go? Or are we talking about a different definition of the words, something closer to an incursion or whatever? What are your can we talk about how you guys are using that word?
It will be unlike anything you played in the Division before.
Okay.
We do want to give you that unique, bespoke experience that is not just about the obvious challenge of what's in front of you and how to best it, but also the exploration of how to move forward and how to complete the challenges that we put forth. And we really want it to be that star on the horizon, that character in the end game that you build towards, and that you little by little finally get to take on and best.
Right. So it's going to be the thing that keeps us coming back. One of the things. One of the things. All right.
For the hardcore.
For the hardcore.
It's
well, that's interesting. So you're saying this is not designed for casual, because a lot of people assume, some people would hope that raids are really easy and I can sort of matchmake into them and we steamroll through them and I get the loot. It's not like that. It's for the hardcore.
This is. I'm not a hardcore player, right? I think it's well known within the team that I'm not the best player out there. Sure. Endgame is a particular focus for the Division 2. We want to launch with something that is meaty at endgame. We've got a couple of tricks up our sleeves for that too.
Okay, fair enough.
But the raid is the hardcore challenge.
Right.
The raid is that pinnacle experience that is the hardcore experience in the hardcore part of the game. Nice. So that's really the concept and the conception behind it. Is we really want to build that up as this is the ultimate feat of strength within the game.
I like the sound of that. That's what everyone's been. Did you want to say something on the raids, or that's it?
Yeah. No, I just want to also, as Julian touched on, that's very important to us, is that the full buffet that is the game stays super relevant.
Super
relevant.
Relevant.
In terms of activity and content, but that you can experience it in different ways.
Right.
Right. So we're not shifting all focus away from what you've been doing in
Got
a
it.
single thing, but
Got
it is really that ultimate challenge, right? The pinnacle.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up. It's very kind of you to sit down with me and answer these
Thank
questions.
you.
I really appreciate it.
Sorry, we're a little bit tired. It's the
Yeah.
last day.
I think you
Our
guys nailed
energy-
it.
Our energy is super low.
I think you did a spectacular
deserve
job.
more, so
No,
Yeah.
I think we
next time
got
around-
survival pretty much not confirmed, and we got a whole bunch of other stuff, so it was great. So thank you, and best of luck with the launch. I know it's out next year. I'm sure you guys have a huge amount of work ahead.
But it's exciting work.
Of course, yeah.
I'm dying to get back to work now. I'm dying to go and transfer some of the energy that we got to the team. Were you at the Ubisoft conference?
I was, of course, yeah, I wouldn't miss it.
Didn't feel
It was
great.
fantastic. It was so
It
good.
felt so warm. It
Yeah.
was so nice.
It was.
So I want to take that, bottle it up, bring it back to the different teams because we've got a lot of work, but I'm feeling so confident about it. I love the demo that we've got.
Yeah, it was fun. I played it through 4 times now.
Four times.
Yeah, they keep sort of like, I keep sneaking in behind them, like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm sorry, just 5 more minutes. So,
There's a team downstairs on the mixer booth.
oh yeah.
Who've been speedrunning it.
Right.
So they queue up for an hour to play for 5 minutes.
Nice.
So
Respect.
respect
That's
those guys. Thank you so much.
No, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, and hope to see each other again soon. Cool. Cheers. Thank you, guys.